Hello. So today we're going to be talking about Catholic schools. 1 second. Let me just. It's kind of weird. Okay. So today we're going to be. Why isn't this working? Okay, got it. All right, it's working now. Sorry, I'm just making sure that everything's working on YouTube and X. Today we're going to be talking about Catholic schools and specifically about retention rates within the faith. Catholic schools really mean a lot to me because my kids go there, and so as a parent looking out for my kids, I'm making sure that my kids are going to a school that's going to enrich their faith and to promote the traditions of the faith. And so, does that mean I found a perfect Catholic school? No, I have not. But have I found a good one? Yes, I have. So today we're going to be going over some statistics. We're going to be, first I want to point this out. This is what my wife got. That's going to be hanging in the back for the rest of the month, the Sacred Heart, because it is the month of the Sacred Heart. So, all right, let's see. Get to some of these statistics. So before I go into the hard statistics first, what I want to do, let's see, here we go. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. All right, so these are what's called the Catholic Schools Fast Facts, or fact sheet, whatever. This is from the USCCB. Oops. You can probably hear me now better. Oh, I'm so sorry. All right, so sorry about that. My volume probably sucked for a little bit, but so just to clarify, when I get back, I'll show you the thing my wife got me for the month of the Sacred Heart. But today we're going over the facts and statistics of Catholic schools, specifically in retention of the faith. I will be going over another time where we go over the monetary aspect of the faith, where it's incredibly expensive. But as I said earlier, my kids don't go to a perfect Catholic school, but they go to a good Catholic school. And anybody who's looking to look for Catholic school or consider Catholic schools for their children, make sure you review the school itself first. That's the only recommendation I have, because that's really important. So all right, so I'm gonna put marks up there. I didn't go to Catholic school, went to a Lutheran school for 1 year actually, and I found that Catholic schools tend to be fast tracks to agnosticism. So that brings up a thing that before I get into this, Fulton Sheen is quoted as saying something similar, right? Like where he's like, send your kids to public school so that they can be challenged and fight for their faith. If they go to Catholic school, they'll lose it or become agnostic or atheist or whatever. And so if you can find that video, because I remember watching it, I can't remember, like, I don't know where it's at. I tried finding it for this video, but I wasn't able to find it. So if anybody is able to find that, that would be great. But yeah, in some cases, I would agree with you. I've known several people who've gone to Catholic schools and are not Catholic or not practicing anymore. I went to a public school all 12 years. So, all right. So let's go into the fast facts, facts. It says fast facts right here, guys. So like, don't hold that against me, but it's, all right. So I want you to notice something. And I would like you to guess what you notice as I go through this, because it is important. So in 2016, about 50.4 million children attended public schools, 5.2 million children attended private schools, with almost 2 million in Catholic schools. There are 151,000 staff teaching in Catholic schools. 2.8% are religious or clergy. The student-teacher ratio in Catholic schools is 13 to 1. The NCEA is the National Catholic Education Association. So that's what that reference is. 99% of students who attend Catholic high school graduate. Of those, 86% attend four-year colleges. Currently, 5 of the 8 Supreme Court justices went to Catholic school. So I don't know when this was done, so I don't know how accurate that actually is. Since 1994, the percentage of schools with boards has increased from 14.35 to a current level of 83.4%. The minority population accounts for 19.8% of the Catholic school population, and then it breaks down to different minorities. 17.4% of Catholic schools students are not Catholic. 45% of Catholic schools in the United States participate in federal nutrition programs, which provide over 270,000 free meals to children daily. So that's a taxpayer-funded free meals program. So just to clarify, the mean cost per pupil at Catholic schools is $5,847. The national per pupil average is $12,608. Catholic schools provide over $24 billion a year in savings for the nation. Okay, I don't know where they got that last part down, but the mean cost here is split between both. Like, they don't tell you the difference between high school and elementary school. So like, that's an important distinction, because this is about what I pay per kid for private school right now, because they go to a Catholic elementary school. They do not pay that much. We do not pay that much at all. So that's not. But there's other statistics that break that down. So here's the faith, life, and formation. ACR testing in Catholic schools, 2010 study, What Do Our Children Know About Their Faith by Dr. John Convey. Dr. Convey chronicled the success of Catholic schools in teaching the Catholic faith, drawn largely from testing data from the assessment of catechesis, religious education, or ACRE. The report indicated that students in Catholic schools, both Catholics and non-Catholics, scored higher on faith knowledge than do students from parish programs. Dr. Convey gave various examples of ongoing success in religious education and catechesis in schools, including examples from different places, such as different dioceses. I'm not going to list them all, but they're right there. So let's see. Okay. So here's a clarification. Okay, so it saved 24 million because the parents are paying for it and not the right, because the parents are paying for it. But jokes on everybody. I used to be a trustee for a public school board. We still use all that money. So like and I'm not just talking about our school board, but the state of Michigan, like they try to use up as much money as possible, regardless of how many students are there. So, because there needs to be justification for the next year and the next year and the next year. So it's all about justification of making sure you have the most money you possibly can. So yes, technically that's true, but I'm all about voucher programs. So, because it follows the kid, it doesn't follow poor schooling and decisions. And that's me as a trustee, former trustee, saying that. So just keep that in mind. So all right, academic and civic benefits. So Catholic schools are good for the public. Catholic schools tend to operate as communities. So these aren't even like statistics per se. They're just general like clarifications. So which links to higher level of teacher commitment, student engagement, and student achievement. The Catholic school climate, mission, and purpose positively impact student achievement and attendance. A faith-based orientation builds coherence and integration of schools and school community. In Catholic schools, the student achievement gap is smaller than in public schools. In Catholic schools, overall academic achievement is higher. In Catholic schools, student math scores improve between sophomore and senior years. Latino and African American students in Catholic schools are more likely to graduate from high school and college. Students with multiple disadvantages benefit from the Catholic schools. And let's see, Catholic schools unlock the intellectual potential of the young people they serve while forming them for a personal living encounter with Jesus. Catholic school students are more likely to pray daily, attend church more often, retain a Catholic identity as an adult, and donate more to the church. So this is from Sander in 2001. So that is a fairly old study to be citing in even the 2020s. That is a very, very old study. So old that I do not think that it's legitimate to actually use, because the dynamic of the culture has changed so much. Students in Catholic schools demonstrate higher academic achievement than their public school peers from similar socioeconomic backgrounds. So there's other statistics that show that. So that not just that. Again, they're citing very old studies. I don't know why, because clearly they make a reference to 2016. So you'd think whatever. Like I am confused as to why they did this, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt right now. Okay, so like that's because there's even during this time frame from 2016 backwards, they have studies they can reference. I'm pretty sure. I mean, the Pew Research studies would be able to even do that, or CARA. 99% of Catholic school students graduate from high school on time, and 86% of Catholic school graduates attend college. A Black or Latino child is 42% more likely to graduate from high school and 2.5 times more likely to graduate from college. Let's see. Catholic school emphasis on lived Christian community stimulates parental engagements. Inner city schools, Latino Catholics parents. All right. Catholics, you kind of get what like they're getting at. Neighborhood social cohesion decreases and disorder increases following the closure of Catholic elementary school, which is to say crime increases after a school closes. And other bad things you don't want happening. Police beats in Chicago that experienced at least one Catholic school closure had a higher crime rate. So that's another study saying the same thing or a similar thing. So those are relatively newer and citable. Catholic schools are sacred places helping to build a better society. Graduates of Catholic high schools are more likely to vote. Catholic schools save taxpayer money. Again, they use the $24 billion. Catholic schools graduates enjoy higher earning potential. Catholic school graduates are more civically engaged, and a bunch of other stuff. It's all just the same thing. Like it's, engaged, more tolerant, less likely to incarcerate. Students participate in the law. It's like, sorry, there's I'm just kind of like skipping it because I don't want you to just hear things that don't exactly are not quite relevant. But yeah, because these are all right. So let's see. I'm going to try to attempt to look at this. So that is not appropriate. I don't even know why that's showing. So I'm not going to use that link again. That's what I get for not clicking the link prior, is I get a random advertisement to something in a link that seems sketchy. So, all right. So in chat, does anybody, bothers me that some of those statements are dated nearly 30 years ago. Yeah, like that's exactly the point. Like that is not okay. As a statistician, like that, like there have been studies since then that cover that detail. And so citing so far back is unnecessary and completely irrelevant because the culture has changed so much. Yeah. Yeah. So no one is expanded. So here's the thing that I'm trying to point to is that, do you notice all the like statistics that aren't about faith are very particular? Like the graduating level, the how effective and a student is like in a number of things, but not like their faith. Like it's like you get this where they may know the faith. Good job. I'm glad they know the faith in like a factual way. Which, by the way, you have to buy to find. Like it's $30. Like there's that was really frustrating to find when I was like looking through this. But I'm not going to spend $30 on something done in 2010 for something that has probably been reestablished since then. But then like you'll notice like, okay, so here, it talks about Catholic school students are more likely to pray every day or pray daily, attend church, more often, retain a Catholic identity as an adult, and donate more to the church. That was the link I just used, and it gave me like a really weird, like something that like should make you really suspicious. I was hoping it would just send me to the paper, but that's not really what it did at all. So I'm not too thrilled about that. But why aren't those statistics up here? Like, those statistics should be the first statistics that are there, because like parents typically do not send their kids to Catholic school like just for the education. Like, there is a moral structure they want to support that they have at home, and they want it in the school. And so the idea that this is like buried, like this is on the 3rd page, for crying out loud. And it's like you have to go to the study. You have to actually click the link. That is a problem. And because it doesn't show that this is like front and center. Like it's literally in the name, Catholic schools. Like it's, you would think the faith would be, front and center in explaining that. And so that is my little like thorn in my side about this, I guess. But let's see, I'm going to move this off. All right, let's see if I can go into something else. So here's the original report that's on the thumbnail. And this is from The Pillar. And The Pillar, I think, did this in, let's see, 2021. So it's fairly relevant. Mass attendance in childhood mass. Now I got to find it again. Why do I do that? Here we go. All right. So it says here, we tried controlling our data for childhood mass attendance, family religious practices, etc., but in all cases, we found a clear difference in both adult Catholic identity and weekly mass attendance between people who went to Catholic schools and their public school counterparts. And so what you have here is a retention rate. You have those in the deep green, 25% for the public schools that are still Catholic and go to mass every week. So I am in this section. So if in the survey, if I was to associate myself to this survey, that is where I would be, because I went to public school. I would be in that 25%. I go to mass every week. And then you have a lot of my, like a lot of my peers, they are still Catholic, but they go to mass less often. And then in Catholic school, that number is 36, and the mass attendance is 41 for those that go less often. So here's the thing. Like, if you read this article, there's kind of like this suggestion that the 77 total is like this big win compared to the 69 because it's statistically significant. And so the thing about statistical significance is this: it needs to also be practically significant. Okay, so like if practical significance is just statistical significance, then well, first off, that falls into a whole bunch of problems, but that is like not okay. Simply because it has a p-value less than, I'm going to assume 0.05, does not then mean that this is a good thing. It is different. We're showing that those that go to Catholic school tend to go to mass as an adult compared to those that go to public school. But here's the problem. That doesn't show causation. What that shows, assuming we understand private school, like first off, people have the means to go to private school compared to those that go to public school. And again, they say they control for a lot of different things. But here there's still a problem, is that there's just a general attitude of, what is it? If you go to Catholic school, like, I don't even know how they exactly controlled for religious practices, because they have the designations up there. By controlled, if that means they just had a separate question, the problem is that they separated it in their analysis and how they're showing it. So you don't really get to see that inner, like how it affects in comparison. You just see that this is there. So when it comes to like those that go to Catholic school, they tend to be more earnest in what they want. Like, you're going to have people, like for me, for example, my kids are going to Catholic school because I don't want them to be like brainwashed with what's going on in the culture right now. I want them to go to Catholic school and be faithful Catholics. And we're going to be doing, my wife and I are engaged in their upbringing. And so again, they say it's controlled, but if the controlled is simply that they asked a separate question and it's somewhere else, that is not controlled in the sense of, oh, well, we accounted for that and then it's just 36% and there's a difference there. It's like you're still not, like, the intent of the parents are still there. Like, you haven't shown that in this graph and how that separates. And like that's a significant problem when you say you controlled for something. You need to show how that control is separated. So typically in like a like in a, say, like a logistic regression, you will have a question, or I'm sorry, you will have an equation where you will have an equation where you'll have crap. Sorry, I'm blanking on this for a second. In a regression model for logistic regression, you will have as its own parameter religious practices and a race, ethnicity, all of those will have their own betas is what we call them. And so you can see that there's a clear distinction here. And so if they ended up, let's see, if they did something like that, I guess they could, like if they reversed like a logistic regression model, they could have, but there's no indication that this isn't anything but frequencies, which is different. And so how they say that they're controlled, it causes a problem. Because like I said, those that go to Catholic school, those that send their kids to Catholic school, probably have a religious life, probably have something that they do in the house to promote the faith. And so it's not because they go to Catholic school. Catholic school then at that point just becomes simply a demographic as opposed to an intervention. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Let's see, I'm reading the chat to me. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to assume that makes sense in the chat. Because right, because like if you again are like me and you want your kids to follow the practices of the faith and not be brainwashed by the culture, I'm going to send them Catholic school, and at home I'm going to do those practices. So that creates a problem because that 77 at that point doesn't look as big compared to the 69. And then on top of that, when it comes to such studies, and this question, like such a question is asked, if this is a reported question, specifically a self-reported question. Here, let me get my face back in here because I all right, here, I'm back here. So here's our new thing, if you didn't hear. But if it's a self-reported question, then you also have the bias of people saying things to make themselves look better to the interviewer, which is a real effect that happens. It does not, like, it is not something I'm trying to diminish for the sake of diminishing this. Like, again, my kids go to Catholic school. I would love this to be like what people strongly suggest this to be. But as a statistician, I can't just be like, oh, okay, I'm going to be okay with confirmation bias in that aspect. I'm going to be critical of this because I want the best and truest answer to come out. So, for example, if you were asked on the phone, all right, how many times do you go working out per week? Okay. And the options are never, 2 to 3 times a week, and 5+ days. Okay, which is not an abnormal question. So that would be similar to you go weekly, you go occasionally, and you never go. Okay. What happens? Well, in a lot of cases, people round up. They'll be like, well, I go like once a week, every 2 weeks. So, I mean, I'll say 2 or 3 times a week. Or even if they go like once in a great while, they don't want to look like they're lazy talking on the phone because they don't want that other person. Like there's an interview effect that happens where you want to impress or at least meet a bare minimum of the person when you're answering those questions. And so you don't want them to think you're a slob. And so in some cases, for the workout, you'll say 2 to 3. And in a similar way, if a Catholic questionnaire is asking you about whether or not you go to mass um, more often, less, like weekly, mass less often, Easter and Christmas, like it's the same problem. Like you have that influence happening. And so these numbers, like for both, I'm not going to just say for Catholic schools, but for both are biased. They're not accurate in that in a totality sense. And of course, in statistics, that's not the case always, but in self-reported studies, some more of it kind of comes out where it's like you're still having that problem. You're having that problem to a greater degree because it's a self-reported study and you're dealing with egos at that point. And so, although I would probably make the case that the bias is bigger in Catholic schools because there's a higher expectation of them to be faithful and practice. So I would, so hopefully this is all making sense. I am not saying studies suck. I mean, I'm a statistician. I used to work for a major international surveying company, but it's, I currently work in a private sector. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I do, but I am a statistician there. It is a bit, frankly speaking, I'm concerned about doxing. So I'm going to be frank about that. So I'm not going to tell you exactly which industry I'm in right now. But so like when let's see, that 36% is depressing no matter how you slice it. Right. So now you found that there's statistical significance. Cool. Where's the practical significance come into play? Well, that shouldn't be the standard. It shouldn't be the standard that we're statistically significant from public schools, and that's cool. That's great. If there is a relationship between Catholic schools and teaching the faith and those practicing the faith afterwards, which I believe there is one, then 36 is way too low. Because like that 41%, like cool, cultural lukewarm Catholics. I don't know exactly where they are in their journey, but in terms of like just base numbers, I'm not going to assume that they're all like hunky-dory and on their way into the church the way that everybody would like that to be. The reality is that's not how that's working. And the numbers play that out. Like other statistics show that. So I'm being super critical here. So I know I'm coming off as like very critical, but like this is like my stuff and I'm like not pulling punches on something that I sincerely care about. This is something that and it's not anything against the Pillar either. So like the Pillar is doing the best with what they have. So like the Pillar does great things. Okay. I'm with statistics. I'm not saying they're bad. The wording I think could have been better, but in terms of the paragraph prior, but overall, I think they do a great job. But when it comes to, excuse me, but when it comes to like understanding this, what we should be going for those that go to weekly mass should be 50%. Like that should be the goal. Like that should be what we expect. And then 50% may not pan out. Because let's think about this for a second. Okay. Like parents are paying money, like a lot of money, as we just talked about. Okay. Based off the fast facts sheet. They're spending 7 to 8 hours a day at a Catholic institution. You would expect them to learn Catholicism there. And then at home with their primary teachers, their parents, to have whatever they've learned either be talked about or reinforced or something new that helps with what's going on at school. Because obviously like parents have more leeway in what they're able to talk about. So you would expect a higher retention rate than simply just a little over a third. And if the amount of time that people, like, if Catholic schools are like here's what like bothers me. You have a case where like biology teachers, okay, I'll just pick on like high school. Biology teachers will not go into certain topics like let's see, this is from a friend of mine who went to a Catholic school here in Michigan in high school. I'm not going to tell you which one. Um, okay, never mind. I'm not going to do that. That's hearsay. I'm just going to scrap the whole thing. Just ignore that. So we're just going to stick to the facts, stick with what's going on. So do you have any thoughts about Chester? All right, well, let's, okay, wow. Okay, 1 second. Let's get rid of that. There's I honestly do not. So I've heard of Chesterton academies, but I don't have any like stats on them. And I know like your other independent Catholic, I think they're independent, but other independent Catholic schools have become a pretty big thing, especially in Michigan, where we have more leeway since like, I want to say like 10 years ago with charter schools being expanded. So I don't quite know that. I didn't look in the statistics for that because, frankly speaking, a generation hasn't passed to see any influence on a big scale. So I didn't look at them. Although there are older versions of independent Catholic schools, but I would say because of how things are done, that they would be grouped up in here. Like they would just be part of the Catholic schools. Just like, if you ask these people, all right, did you go to a TLM or an NO? Well, they're probably the same. They're just going to be treated the same. Let's see. So the range must be vast. At least I pray so. They can't be as bad as the ones here. Okay. That is unfortunate. All right. So, okay, serious question. Why not 100% considering stakes? So 2 reasons why. The first reason is 100%. Nothing human measurement, nothing on a scale like that involves human measurement will reliably be 100%. Because there's always human error. There's always something going on. So like whenever someone, like that's like a huge tell as a statistician when someone doesn't know what they're talking about. And I'm not saying you, Mark, I'm saying those that are going like 100% of people do X, Y, and Z, and they sampled like 100,000 people or something. Or not 100,000 people, usually like 800 people. And so you're not able to make that claim. You can say the study showed 100% of the people who did this said this, but to extrapolate to the entire group of people, like that's really wrong. Like, because like there's error involved. So like saying 100% is like kind of a kind of like a giveaway. Well, I've already said this, but it's a giveaway for someone who's extrapolating the data in a way that it shouldn't. But it is an important thing. So the second thing is because I know that there are schools that don't emphasize the Catholic aspect of the church. Like, I mean, they don't emphasize the faith in a way that's practically meaningful to the students they have. And so it creates a problem. And so you're right. It should be striving. Like we should be pushing for 100%. But the measurement that I was simply giving was a standard because like not everybody is going to be the same as they leave high school, right? Like you have life experience, and life experience will play a part. And so you can't say that Catholic schools have this overwhelming, like 100% influence on a kid. So, because they don't. And so they have a high influence, but it's not, I do not think the influence they have is being specifically, if I had to say what's going on here, the influence Catholic schools have are not being actualized when it comes to the faith. And that they're, like with the fact sheet, they're prioritizing graduation and doing probably a whole bunch of other things. But like academically, and they're probably great academically, but when it comes to the faith, um, like it creates a real problem. Like I would expect, so like there's like different levels of expectations. Like I expect like the Summa Theologica, like arguments from that to be like a default thing. But I honestly have no idea if that's done in most or like all or even most Catholic schools when it comes to high schools. Because I mean, there's a variety of reasons, but I'm not going to necessarily go into that right now. Let's see. There's one near me there, solid. So that's good. It seems like I don't care if God exists. So actually, there is a let's go into a thing. So someone had mentioned. So here's actually the reasons they give for stop going to church. So you have I moved away from the church I had been attending. I did not feel that attending church mattered. So this is another thing that you could break it down. Let's see. They break it down by mass attendance, but they don't break it down by school, which is what I would, think would look for. I moved away from my family. I did not attend, or I did not feel that attending church mattered. I had a change of circumstance, work, health, family situation that made it harder to attend. My beliefs about God or religious practice changed. I felt my church or religious leaders were not living up to their beliefs. I felt like my church or religious leaders endorsed moral or political views that were wrong. I do not feel welcoming to the church. I stopped believing in God, which is all the way at the bottom, but you have kind of like this other thing, like I did not feel that attending church mattered. Okay, well, it's not stop believing in God. That means they're probably going Protestant, right? And then I moved away from my family. I moved away from the church I had been attending. Okay, so that's a matter of habit. So they went to church out of habit, not because they were developing the virtue of religion, which is a very different thing. So there's building up habits and building up virtue. And so there's a huge difference between the two, and we need to make sure when we're teaching our kids that it's not simply, all right, well, you're just gonna go. It's like, all right, well, you got to teach them why. You have to get into the virtue aspect of religion, not simply the habit. And this kind of goes with in here. I believe it's Father Ricardo. He does the program Acts 29. Obviously, there's no Acts 29, but it's like that's us. We're Acts 29. So like that's what it's playing off of. But he's very big about like you can't just let the kids go through the motions. Like you have to like show them how God is impactful in their life. And again, you have to show them the virtue of religion. And the virtue of religion obviously is within Catholicism, but it's and we don't typically talk about religion in that way, but it's I mean, it's a virtue, and it's very different from simply just developing habits of religious practice. Let's see. Let's see. Sorry, just reading this. On one hand, see, I mean, almost done. Sorry. Like, thanks for. So here's like the thing. There is zero apologetics in Catholic schools. I don't know if there's zero, but you know what? There isn't a lot. There's some schools that do a great job, but then there's other schools that are like, well, we're teaching you the faith and I'm not here to debate and blah blah blah. And it's like, so here's the thing about that though. That is something from an old age. Apologetics for a long time after Vatican II. So Massachusetts, where are you? You said Vatican II from the beginning. Here we go. So after Vatican II, apologetics was dropped as a form of talking about the faith, which is really weird when you think about it, because like Paul is shown as an example of doing apologetics like in Greece. And like I don't know why you would ever just drop it, but apparently in America that was something that was dropped. And that's why Catholic Answers, specifically Catholic Answers, was such a big deal when it hit the scene, because Carl Keating, when he established Catholic Answers, he used to be a lawyer. He established Catholic Answers to address questions that people had in a very direct way, but also in what true apologetics is supposed to be. And so he started Catholic Answers, and for me, like that was a big turning point. Not when he started it. For me, it was in 2010. It was still one of the few things around. So apologetics is not in schools. Like there's still kind of like there's a lot of things that get grandfathered in. Like there's like these exactly the bad understanding of tradition sometimes happens, which is something that should not be continued still continues. And so in this case, there's a lot of schools that do not practice or that do not teach apologetics, and they really should. Like that tradition of not teaching it needs to stop, especially with like how the world is coming, and especially when it comes to what is it? Like there's so many. I haven't gotten to those statistics yet, but I'll show you how many non-Catholics are in the school. So, but yeah, that is a good point. Let's see, most Catholic high school. Some don't know what it is. Whole list of points is. So the whole list points to failure in catechesis, except maybe change in circumstances. Yeah, I mean, I would think so. I mean, like, stop believing in God. Like, you could have trauma that happens. So, like, that's a very real problem that could happen as well. Let's see. Don't mind me. He's a slow reader. I am kind of a slow reader, but that's yeah. So I'm trying to juggle a few things at once, and I appreciate you being patient with me as I do that. So let's see. So here's let's see. Here we go. So this is also really important. Enrollment, Catholic, 1,435,000. Non-Catholic, 349,000. So that's like 19%. Oh my gosh. So like that's basically 20%. 1 out of every 5 kid in a Catholic school is not Catholic. And the emphasis on apologetics seems to be lacking. Why wouldn't you like like why wouldn't you like, I'm sure sometimes, like I've heard some of my theologian friends that teach at schools, they will talk that they'll have like apologetics depending on like whatever topic they're doing, but not like, it doesn't seem to be the case where it's apologetics as like a class. So that depends with a lot of things. Like for example, if someone in biology started bringing up well, I believe in, so imagine one of these like non-Catholic students, let's say atheist. You'll have an atheist come up and be like, well, I believe in evolution, and so I don't believe in God, and yada yada yada, and evolution points to atheism, not a God. Like I would expect in that moment the biology teacher to be like, well, actually, when Darwin was still alive, the church stated that evolution is a mechanism in which God could utilize how how life came about, but you can't believe it as an atheist understanding. Like I would expect that right away, an immediate reaction to that, because you're dealing with biology, just like I would expect someone when it comes to genetics to also throw out, okay, well, Gregor Mendel, like kind of a big deal in genetics and in biology, or understanding physics, you start throwing out like, okay, maybe not Isaac Newton, because Isaac Newton's like, I don't even know if he believed the Trinity definitively, but you throw out other religious people who talked about physics and who built on physics, because every science has, as their like a lot of their fathers in establishment, like Catholic monks, Catholic sisters, Catholic brothers. Like, so it's like really weird, like that isn't just like right off the bat. Or like, obviously in physics you have the Big Bang, and the Big Bang's from a priest. So that's what I would expect in a Catholic school. It's kind of like an ad hoc version of apologetics done in the material that you're talking about by the teachers that don't have a theology degree. Because I would expect in a Catholic school that the biology, physics, obviously in this case in high school, that they would have these references like on tap. Like they would know them because they're serious about teaching Catholic understanding of biology and physics. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like that's like anti-intellectual. We quite literally invented the scientific method. So it's not a anti-intellectual situation. It is understanding and showing how reason and, well, I don't want to say reason because reason supersedes both faith and science, but it's science and faith come together. And so that's what I would expect in a Catholic school. I would expect that type of integration where you don't have like teachers caught off guard from like atheistic jabs like by high schoolers. That's just me. But so staffing here, so we'll go into here because this is also important. You have religious sisters accounting for 1.7%. So this is in 2017 and 2018. Brothers 0.2%, clergy 0.3%, female lay 85%, and male lay 12%. And so that is quite a distribution. And there's one thing missing here, though, in terms of like what we just went over, is I would have loved to have seen what the distribution of Catholic and non-Catholic teachers are. Because when it comes to, oh geez, I am way behind on this. All right, I'll read this in a second, but having an understanding of how many non-Catholics are teaching our kids is kind of a big deal. And I understand there is a focus for the Catholic schools to prioritize Catholic lay people as opposed to non-Catholics, but like that still becomes a problem because we do have so many that are not Catholic. So I'm going to quickly go into so this is a good point, Max. So the enforcement of Canon 803 with regards to not just Protestant, but explicitly anti-Catholic teachers and cohabitating teachers is non-existent. This is from a recent high school grad. So like, okay, so if that is happening, so if you're a recent high school grad, and by recent, I'm assuming like in the last few weeks when the school ended, I would highly suggest for you to take this up with the bishop, and hopefully your bishop is good like with this, because some bishops, hopefully your bishop will be able to take what you're saying seriously. And so I don't want to say like all bishops are terrible. They're not, but they have a lot on their plate. And but still, I would suggest that you try and bring this out because it is really important that such things are shown, because that is naturally a scandal, right? Like that is something that should not exist in a Catholic school system at all. Cohabitating teachers and people knowing about it, the second other people know about it, including the students, like, yeah, that's like grounds for, according to the wordings that I've read. I was thinking about posting them, but I'm not going to do that. But yeah, like that's breaking the Catholic moral standard that they're given, and so like that's a really big problem. And I know that there's some, based off talking with those same teachers I referenced earlier, they know theological teachers that in other sections that shouldn't, that the way they've been acting, especially with the brainwashing non-Sacred Heart flag. Yeah, like that's like a real problem. And I'm very glad in our archdiocese we just, prior to what the Pope or the DDC put out about the rainbow stuff, like we were ahead of it by a few months, and so that was already like being implemented here. So I'm like, hopefully next year those people are taken care of in our archdiocese. But um yeah, from like, I agree with you though. Like basically if they find out that someone's like gay and gets married in a civil marriage, like, oh, got to do it now because it's in a civil marriage. Like it's public, and it is public. It is, it's in the state record. That is a public thing. But like cohabitating, like if that's like a secret that everybody knows, okay, well, like that, those people should be removed. Or something needs to be discussed about that arrangement not existing anymore. Because I mean, it just leads to scandal, and especially if it's affecting college or high school students, like that's terrible. Like you shouldn't even know that. Like that's terrible. Uh, right. So just to finish off what you were saying, because I didn't do that. Right. It promotes activities the church condemns, and that's the huge problem. Let's see. Okay, I'm not gonna put that up 3, 4, 5, but that's pretty funny. Okay, so here's the thing with that. Okay, so Max, you're like hitting a whole bunch of things that I am personally seeing with my kids' education. So my oldest is 10, and so I am dealing with this myself, where I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna say my daughter's name. I almost did right there, but daughter number one. Let's just go with that. What is sorry, my daughter has a very unique name, and if I said it, like, it wouldn't be hard to find. And so I'm not gonna say. So, but I'll be like, all right, so are you learning anything in your religion classes? And she's like, well, I'm basically just learning the same things about the sacraments over and over again. And I'm like, that is unfortunately what I thought you were doing. Like at home, we teach our kids things in a very organic way, but like it's really frustrating that the school doesn't go beyond, well, here's a great example of a saint, here's what the sacrament is, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of emphasis on, like what you said, why we believe this. Because at 10 years old, that's definitely the time where explaining why we do things, why we do what we do, where the symbolism comes from, especially when it comes to the sacraments, in the school, like that really should be said. All right, so thank you for the comments, Max. Yeah. I just read your world religion comment. So Robert, are you currently in Catholic school? Let's see. Our oldest says hi, by the way. Okay, my daughter says she should be in bed, but okay. So don't say hi back to her. Don't say hi back to her. All right, so many Catholic schools have a big emphasis on school sports. So here it is. Yeah, I knew someone was going to bring this up. And yeah, many Catholic schools have a big emphasis on school sports. So they recruit players based on their ability to play sports, and they care less about the faith, but more about setting them up for college. That is the worst thing about this all, is that so you have one good, okay? You have one good, which is college, okay? And I say good in a like almost neutral sense there. And then you have a really good thing, which is the faith. Okay. When you advertise yourself as a school and you say you're a Catholic school, you are emphasizing the really good aspect, which is the faith. That doesn't mean like that means if you don't do that, you are failing. Like, you're actually doing a bad thing because you're citing this very good thing as the reason why you exist. And yeah, Catholic education in general, overall, way better than what the public school does. The problem is exactly what you're pointing out, Iz, is that there's this emphasis on graduating. And I'm a big proponent right now of telling kids not to, if they don't have a full ride and their parents can't pay for it, not to go to college, and to focus on trades or other things that cost a lot cheaper. Because as someone who went to college, not even when it was that high, okay, I'm still strapped with student debt. But I also have 5 kids and I'm married and I have a house, but I can't pay off that student debt because it's basically going to be with me till the rest, like till I die. Probably. That's probably what's happening. But that's what happens when you go to a Michigan. Like, I went to Michigan State here in Michigan. And so, like, it wasn't cheap, even though it's a public school. But it was cheap relative to all the private schools. But I got a few degrees while I was there, and then I went to grad school. And so even with all that, and especially with the recent inflation, like, there's been a lot of problems with me being able to pay that down. So given that, I don't advertise to kids to do that, to go to college and to strap themselves down with such debt. So, but again, like with what Iz's talking about, you're playing sports and getting them prepped for college. Like, that absolutely does happen. There's several schools in Michigan that do that, Catholic schools that do that. Now, the ones that are coming into my mind, I know are like really good high schools. And, but other ones, like when I say really good high schools, I mean, like, they have mass like every day. The people I know that have gone there will be able to tell me, like, not just know the faith, but they clearly live the faith. And it's like a beautiful thing to see, because that's what you expect from a high school, is to cultivate that type of appreciation for the faith and practice for the faith in the virtue of religion. And so, okay, so I digress. I'm kind of like going off topic a little bit, which I do a lot. So Massachusetts hasn't quite derailed me yet. I haven't seen him, so it's kind of, sorry, Sunday school. Yeah, so like there's this there's this meme. I might be able to show it at the end, but it's like like 15,000 hours of unholy teachings. But don't worry, Sunday they'll draw the ark. And it's just like, okay, yeah, like it's public school in particular does a number on one's faith, especially now, given what's there, because it's morphed into something that I didn't deal with when I was in public school. I'm 36, by the way. So just giving all this information out. So, and worried about doxing. So I do want to emphasize that just because a school is good at sports, that does not mean it's not also good at promoting the faith. In fact, the one in Michigan that I'm thinking of does both. It's just they happen to be really good. But let's get into something else. Let's see. So here's something from CARA. So CARA is the group that is basically the research arm of the USCCB that's hosted in Georgetown University. And so they do statistics. And I've done this before where I've talked about their statistics. Like, for example, the statistics on diocesan priests, religious sisters. I am doing a video on the religious sisters. I'm editing it, but that's why it's highlighted. But that's where I'm getting the data from. It's a very reliable source. This is from a 2014 post. And what this is, it's got a lot, man, is it wordy? And man, like, I understand why they used Excel, but because that's what the graph's from. But they could have got rid of the lines. But that, whatever, I'm nitpicking. The percentage of adult and teen never married Catholic males who have ever considered becoming a priest or brother by generation and Catholic school attendance. So basically, you're a single male, you're being asked this question: have you ever thought of becoming a priest or a monk or a brother? Okay. And so, and they separated it by post Vatican II and then millennial. And so we have, according to those that went to attended Catholic primary school, 26% thought about it. Attended Catholic secondary school, so high school, 26 thought about it. And then never attended Catholic school, 9% thought about it. And then for women, the same question, except for religious orders and let's see at this time. Yeah, consecrated virgins and stuff like that. 13, 16, and 6 in those same categories. So this is like boggling to me because, like, if you go to a Catholic school, I do not know how this isn't just 100%. Like, okay, maybe not in primary school where you're, say you go into first grade. It's like, hey, are you going to be a priest when you grow up? Like, I mean, we joke around with our kids when they're that old, but like, I don't expect a school to do that. Whereas like in high school, I don't know how that's not 100%. How have you not told every single male class a question or said to seriously reflect and pray about one's vocation, including the priesthood? Like, how is that not 100%? Like, this is the one that's really weird because unlike where you're expecting some sort of like expectation of after school to continue practicing the faith, in this case it's like, no, you're in school, like you're in, like, say your junior year, you're taking theology, and the theology teacher just goes to all the males, hey, have you thought about seriously reflecting about being a priest? Like, do you know if that's what God wants you to do? Or get married. Same thing with the women. It's like, hey, do you know if you're called to be a wife or a religious sister? Like, just it's a question you ask, and then follow up with, make sure you pray about it. Make sure you, like, and that goes for, like, I know there's some men on here that are either in college or in Catholic school or just graduated. That goes for you too. So I'm going to do that right here. So like, like, seriously think about your vocation, pray about it. I'm not saying you need to be a priest. I'm not saying you need to be married. It's just pray about it. Make it a thing, like, that you do, that you ask God about, because that is something we're supposed to do. And everybody's supposed to do that. Not just simply be like, well, I like women, so I'm going to get married. I mean, becoming a priest is like, they call it a sacrifice for a reason. It's because, yeah, you like women. You're giving that up. Like, you're giving that ability to be a companion in that way up. And you're, called to be a spiritual father of many people. So, yeah, I'm just saying to the guys that are listening and anybody else who's listening who hasn't thought about this, because it makes no sense to me why this is not 100%. But seriously think about your vocation if you're single, and you haven't found it yet, or you haven't, maybe you have found it, that you're going to be married, that you're called to be married. You just haven't found the person, that a compatible person to get married to. That's obviously fine too. So, but man, we're just talking about a whole bunch of stuff and it's awesome. I love, it's just such a great catalyst. So, let's see, school vocations. So yeah, so just like with the priest crisis, this is really, let's see, it's the College Board. Schools bend over backwards for the organization that has single-handedly destroyed our schools between AP propaganda, SAT spare, no effort at the expense of students. Man, I thought you were going to say spare no expense. I'm just a huge Jurassic Park fan, so that's, but yeah, no, like that's absolutely a problem. Like, a lot of our institutions, because like, think about it, like the Catholic school district is within the diocese, and it's technically overseen by the bishop, right? The problem is the bishop may not have the expertise or know-how about what's happening. And so now we have a problem of the people in charge are running it, and they're trying to take it, maybe in the benefit of the doubt, take advantage of systems that are there to help with maybe a struggling school district, because the school district has declined. I don't have those statistics up, but the amount of people who go to Catholic schools has declined significantly. Almost, I want to say, like 64% in the last 10 years. But I think I have the 10 years wrong. I think it's 20 years. But it's one of those. It's a significant decrease. And so or no, they've retained 64%. Sorry. So they've decreased 36%. Let's see. Let's see. Marry young and poor. So if you're called to being Mary, yeah, being poor is okay. So right, can we expect crisis in the seminaries episode? I don't know. I don't think I'll be talking about a pile of sticks anytime soon in regards to the seminaries, because I think Pope Francis definitely like talked about why piles of sticks shouldn't be. I love that I can say that. It's just, it brings out a very childish glee in me. Piles of sticks shouldn't be in the seminaries. But all right, so I digress. So thank you for making it. This has been a great back and forth, guys. Thank you very much. So the other thing, given that I talked about priests are technically like religious sisters, and priests tend to be a huge indicator of how like social norms impact each other. So it's kind of like a great identifier for, yeah, that is working in the culture. That's really promoting people in the culture. So I'm going to treat it the same way here, but I'm also going to talk about other aspects of it here. So in this article, it's another Pillar article. It says, in regards to Catholic schools, however, priests are nearly 3 times more likely to have gone to Catholic schools than the general population of baptized Catholics. And when listing the influences which inspired their vocations, an average of 28% of the priests ordained over the last 5 years listed a teacher as someone who encouraged them to consider the priesthood. So, like, I mean, that's great. That's exactly what should be happening. I literally just said that. Like, that's great that that's happening, but it seems to be happening at a small scale, right? Like, because the amount of priests keeps going down. Like, the amount of priests that we have keeps going down. So that creates a problem. So like, it's great that the proportion is high, but the proportion is a relative understanding, right? You're saying they're 3 times more likely than others. But the reason why others are going down is for a variety of reasons, but it's like we're having, again, a priest crisis that's happening. And we don't have seminaries like how we used to and all this other stuff. And so, like, Catholic schools should be higher in that regard. So that's a plus. But, like, it's almost like I would expect, like, there's an expectation that I think should be attached to this. And I don't know enough because they don't give the numbers here, and they only say likely, to say that how big that expectation should be to the general public. So let's see. This makes teachers one of the biggest influencers on ordinands decisions to enter the priesthood. So that's great. Let's see. So here's another thing. Oh, oops, I skipped it. In the 2023 survey of ordinands, 11% of newly ordained priests reported that they had been homeschooled for at least a portion of their education. On average, these new priests had been taught at home for 8 years out of their K through 12. So that is a huge thing, because you see this here. So again, this is a percentage. So there's a bunch of, this isn't as simple to read as it looks, because each year there's a different amount of priests coming in, and then there's a proportion of that. And so you're kind of seeing a derivative statistic in that regard. So even though it like looks nice that these statistics are like as smooth as they are, I mean, it's going in the opposite direction, except for this, which seems to have a hiccup, but then it catches right back up. But 11% of 11% of priests were homeschooled, which suggests like another thing, right? It's another avenue. We don't homeschool. Obviously, as I stated, our kids go to private school, but it's one of those things where it's definitely an option. If you can homeschool, like you're the primary teacher, you do not need a master's degree to teach your kid K through 12. Like in reality, like there's a lot of things that like, especially now with YouTube, like my other channel, I do have another channel. It is a statistics channel. It is called Learn to Stats. It is quite literally there to help teach people how to do statistics. And so, for example, a very basic one is we go over the standard deviation and how to do standard deviation. You do not need to be an expert in math to teach your kids math, like especially with the books that are available for you, and they don't tend to be as expensive as going to private school. So just something to keep in mind. Let's see. So, oh, okay. All right, yeah, the piles of sticks. Yeah. So, no, okay. So I didn't say a bad word. I just said piles of sticks. I mean, the fact that all of you are able to substitute what that means does not mean I'm saying a bad word. So, like that's, yep. And so yeah, here's a great thing. So just about every 5-year-old boy knows firearm and policeman is a career option. No reason Catholic 5-year-old boys shouldn't think that they can be priests. Coincidentally, like so, our 6-year-old boy just turned. Well, he just had his birthday. He's 6, and when he was 2, and he was walking around, we had him dressed up like a priest, and he had a censer and everything. He was just like walking around like door to door. He had all we're surrounded by Chaldeans, and so they loved it. They loved seeing a priest. So it was a great time. And so there's no reason not to show that the priest that you see at mass is something that your kid could look up to. So let's see. Okay, no, dude, your glee over the Pope's comments is like when the kids catch you saying a swear. Okay, so that may be more appropriate. However, I am not saying it. All right, so here's another thing why I wanted to do this video. So here's personal story time with Ryan. So I can't. Let me just remove this for a second. So my second daughter and I, what we do as a family is we'll have like a rotation of taking our kids to some sort of, we call them adventures with mom or dad, and it's just a one-on-one time that we do. And I went to as part of it, we ended up going to McDonald's because that's where she wanted to go. And I met a former student that used to go to the same Catholic school my kid goes to now. She is not K through 8 at all. She's not even like junior or senior in high school. She's in college. Okay. And she's like really happy to see my daughter wear the shirt. And so when we started talking about it a little bit, she said, "Oh, well, I'm no longer practicing. I no longer go to mass every Sunday, whatever." And it really like struck me really hard. I was the only one talking to her. It wasn't in front of my daughter, but it was something that was like, it seriously bothered me. And so I went to the principal and I said, "Hey, does the diocese do a follow-up questionnaire to former students that went to Catholic school, like, and ask them, hey, like 5 years down the road after high school, are you still a practicing Catholic?" And then asking some like very simple follow-up questions to understand their background, very similar to these surveys that I'm showing you. The difference between these surveys and what I'm talking about is, these people, they're specific. Now you're not going to like keep their information necessarily in that capacity, but it would be something where, oh, we know there's a retention rate at this Catholic school that's awesome, but over here it's crap, it's terrible. Why is that? And so the only way you can accurately get to that you need to ask the people who are affected. You need to ask, well, why are they moving away? Did they see terrible examples at the one school? Like, it sucks that there's like a lag effect of like 5 or 10 years, but like we don't have a good way of measuring that now. And so using these surveys about it, let's pick using these surveys about it where it states, I gotta find it. Yeah, 36 to 25. Okay, cool. I don't know if they went to Catholic school in elementary or in high school. I don't know a lot of things about the people who are answering this question that it actually matters. Whereas like on a diocese level, you can absolutely do that. Like, you can absolutely follow up with that. Now, it also depends on what's in the like contracts, because like you have to pay attention to that. But like legally, like you can write that into what's going on. But it's just this understanding of like, okay, well, I'd like to, if I were in a position where I was in the district and I wanted to know like why maybe this girl I met at McDonald's no longer practices the faith. Like, why did that happen? And attempt to ask her in a survey. Like, yes, you're going to get the biases that I talked about. Okay. You're going to hear, okay, well, like, some people are going to say they do more than they don't. But you're at least able to specify in your area and not rely on statistics that are generalized to the United States. That's like asking how well your kid did at bat, and the coach told you the average at bat is 200. That doesn't tell you crap about your kid. And just like with the diocese, like, this doesn't tell you crap about what's happening in your diocese. That's called the ecological fallacy. Like, you can't do that. And so it's in the best interest of the diocese to follow up with their students and have those studies done. Now, I don't know if studies are done. I asked the principal. I asked the principal several times, actually. He did not get back to me, and I am really annoyed at it. But there's also kind of like this PSA is I would be happy to actually help with that, because that's what I was trying to find. I wanted to contact someone and be like, hey, I will help you make a survey. I will help you develop a methodology to get good feedback, to minimize the best you can with false positives and false negatives, with a survey that is going to directly help the church, because like that's what matters, right? Like, we want these schools to succeed. We also don't want them to cost an arm and a leg, but if they are costing an arm and a leg, we definitely want them to succeed, right? Like, a significant portion of my income is going towards Catholic schools, and we are making sacrifices at home. And with that sacrifice, I expect the school to take seriously what they're saying. And so this is kind of like, I guess, you have the statistics, and now I'm bringing it down to my level, where it's like, this is how it affects me and how I look at it. I'm not just giving my opinion, though, in terms of like simply anecdotes. I am giving you my opinion like prior, like as a statistician. It's just, I care about this, and it's very easy to find out in a sense that is like both legal and, it's not as complicated as people make it out to be. It just means that you have to hire like a few more people, and that's what sucks. Because funding's an issue. Funding's a real issue when it comes to Catholic school districts. But like, I'm going to point this out because I don't know if you guys know this, but the Diocese of Wichita, our diocesan schools do not charge tuition. Okay, so I know I just like kind of like went right into that, but our diocesan schools do not charge tuition. That is huge. That apparently is the only diocese in the United States that has something like that, where the tuition is covered by the church. And if we want to make any like headway into what's going into the culture, like I don't know why education isn't a priority. The Rainbow Brigade certainly knows it's a priority. Why do you think so many like Gen Xers identify as like I'd say X, Y, and Z, but that's quite literally what they're identifying as. Like, I mean, like that's not a joke. But it's like we're at this point where it's like, why isn't setting up uh tuition for like active parishioners? Like, why don't we have a subset of that type of system that is done better? Because we can make it better. We don't have to be strung by all the like regulations and all of that. We also can make better use of the money because of, I mean, a lot of things with the tax breaks. But I mean, it also depends on what state you live in. So like, I'm not, I don't want to pretend like this is possible everywhere. But the reason why this happens in Wichita is because in 1985, the bishop said, no, we're doing this. This is a priority. We're going to do this. Catholic education is going to be affordable. It's going to be free to every parishioner that wants to bring their kids there. Like that's a real, like, that is a sacrifice for the diocese, but it's a sacrifice that develop like it's going to promote people to be Catholic. Like it's going to promote people to become like faithful followers when you have more people who can get into education, get into good education, have teachers that are Catholic, pay Catholic teachers, not like basically I don't want to say poverty wages. They don't get paid poverty wages, but it's really low. Like compared to their public school equivalents, like it is very low. But it's like this whole idea of like we are able to accommodate that, but we need to make it a priority. And I don't know why kids like that aren't a priority. And so it's really weird. So that's my little rant at the end. But it's like an important thing, and I want to talk about this in particular sometime later, but because I think the faith is more important. Like the problem is the faith is influenced by the money here. The faith hiring non-scandalous teachers, being able to fire them if they are scandalous, and then hiring someone else who will both be Catholic and certified to be a teacher. Like that's the risk when they do that. I understand like that situation. It doesn't justify keeping a scandalous teacher as a scandalous teacher, but it does like there is kind of like a crux to this, and that's the problem. Is that education seems to be on a back burner in a very like serious way in a lot of dioceses. And again, I'm not saying, well, Wichita should be looked at as like a model, but also like Wichita is in Kansas, and so not everywhere is like Kansas. So you have to like adjust it based off where you live. What's important is the intent of the bishop. And so like does the bishop think that education matters and that raising Catholic, well-formed Catholic students, given the culture, because here's the other aspect of this culture dynamic. Most of the time, both the parents are going to be working. So like you have to adjust for that. And so like giving an option for those both working parents not to go to a place that's going to brainwash their kids, which is the public schools right now. Like Like, get them into Catholic schools. Like, that should be, again, that should be a priority. Um, I don't know. I just because like that's where the next wave of saints come from. And so like it's so frustrating. So um okay, so let's see. Yep. So yeah, they in 1985 is when it started. And so like understanding like their business, like because they basically like you have to understand how they do it from a business standpoint too. So like are they so like are they I know they get donations, but they may also have some sort of system set up where they have a stockpile of money that gains interest and that interest grows and they can live off that type of interest while without removing the capital that was initially invested. And so basically making easy money to then apply it towards, this very thing. So but yeah, it has been going on for now 40 years. So poor people are suffering from obesity. Priorities are floating out in orbit somewhere. Gosh, like that hurts to read. It's totally right, but like it's definitely not. All right, let's see. Okay, so yeah, this is of course. So I totally get what you're saying because at a TLM you would expect the faith to be taught, whereas at some schools, and I totally get that, Mark, like because you have these situations where you have to check, like the parish that my kids go to for school is a Novus Ordo, and so I have to make sure that that is not a let me keep your thing up there. I have to make sure that what's being taught is not off the wall crazy. Because there are some schools my kids will like it's not even an option. Like they're close enough we could go to, we're not going. It's not an option. I refuse to send my kids there. Um but like yeah, like that's part of the problem though is you have a just like with the video I did TLM versus NOs, like there's a lot of variability in the NO that isn't just reflected in the mass but also outside of the mass, and that's very dangerous. Like the school that my kids go to, for example, I have a huge problem with this. um they they taught, I asked them point blank, I was like, all right, so do you teach on the hand and on the tongue, in the hand and on the tongue? And they said, well, we show in the hand and then we talk about on the tongue. I'm like, you don't show on the tongue? And no, they didn't. That and I was just like, all right, so like that's unacceptable because like you're showing they appealed to parents, but I was like, yeah, it doesn't matter what the parents think though. Like you're not teaching them what the church says you have a right to do. Like obviously what the how the teachers bring it up, obviously that's important. But if you're going to teach communion and how to receive communion, okay, you can't just teach one way, because what you're doing is you're actually, that's a way of removing free will. You're robbing someone of the opportunity to make a decision. And so with reception on the tongue, one of the biggest hurdles people have is seeing it happen. Like my wife, for example, I'm going to throw her under the bus, was like, okay, how exactly do you do on the tongue? like, like she was just baptized, so she gets a pass. Like, okay, so, but it's like, there is a concern about not doing it correctly, because you are, not only are you receiving God in a vulnerable state in the Eucharist, you yourself are being vulnerable by putting your tongue out and allowing someone access to your body, which is what you're doing with the priest. And so But the priest is supposed to be like a father and feeding you just like how I feed my kids. Like that it just happens. So yeah, so like that's just a single example of a problem that I noticed at the one that we go to. Um, but there are others, like I said, like there are others that have like other issues, but you really do have to make sure what's going on at the school. Like you need to understand what's going on. You need to understand how involved non-Catholic parents are too. Oh my gosh, is that a big problem? Like there are non-Catholic parents that do not seem to care about Catholic teaching, obviously. And so like when you do like parent teacher conference, or not parent teachers, like if there's a parent board and they're trying to have a say in events and things that happen at the school, like it's gonna get confrontational and you're gonna have to deal with it. And it sucks. And um but according to the studies, only 20%. So maybe you're at a school where none of the teachers or none of the parents from non-Catholics come up. Let's see. Yeah, I've been going to mass for like 14 years, but only saw it from the back. Yeah, that's true. Um, yep. And so let's see. So it wasn't. So yeah, like you're never going to find a perfect school. So that's the only thing I would say about the vetting. You're never going to find a perfect school. The problem is that there there there's a lot to want from a lot of schools. And so yeah, like that's what I'll say about that. Let's see. All right. So I think without that, I think about that that's well without that, whatever. So there's the new Sacred Heart image that I have behind me instead of the Vatican flag. It takes up the whole space now, so you can't see the printer over here. Um, but I do have to move it for the door, which is funny, and you won't see that, so that's okay. But but my wife ended up picking this out, and it looks great. I'm really a big fan of the heart fire image, the fire heart. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Um, all right. So, I am going to be doing so. Today was actually an ad hoc day. I didn't mean to actually talk about this. It's just something that I've been kind of like in the back of my mind wanting to do. Today was actually supposed to be Sacred Music Day. So, like, Sacred Music Day, like, it was supposed to be a day where I showed sacred music, um, uh, a conversation with my music director and talking about uh, sacred music. And so we had a great conversation. The problem is there are problems with the audio I cannot fix. And so I have to redo the interview with him. So if you have any more questions about sacred music, I will gladly take that to him. I was able to talk to our consecrated virgin at our parish. She's the DRE. And so I will be getting that done in the next few days, and it will probably be released on Friday. Let me see really quick. Well, I think I totally screwed that up. No, yes, no, my kids do that. Okay, cool. Let's see. For those that are watching and have made it this far, because I just realized it's an hour and a half. Holy crap. I didn't expect to go this long doing basically a monologue, but chat's been great. So thank you for that, chat. What is it? So we'll be talking about the religious sisters, like I said, situation. There is a crisis for religious sisters, and then also how she became a consecrated virgin, and both of those are very important, obviously. So I really want people to understand, like, what are the options for vocations for women, and not just being a religious sister, but a consecrated virgin as well. So I really appreciate that from the standpoint of, like, historically in the church, um, consecrated virgins were the first vocation for women. And it was something that was, um, it led into nuns and religious orders and all that stuff. But there was a time where it went away. So that whole conversation is great. And if you can, yeah, I hope you guys watch it, because it's very enlightening about that vocation. So besides that, doesn't look like there's anything else with in chat. So oh, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Yeah, because you've been here like the whole time. So thank you very much. And if you can, please share this, because this is really important. And I know I do say some pretty critical things of Pillar. Again, I do not think Pillar is bad. I just think that the wording in that specific context doesn't quite make sense with what's being presented. And so I'm going to criticize it. So, and for those who do not know, understand statistics, or don't quite, never learned it, I think it's really important to call that out, because like, you don't know, like, and I'm just trying to make things clearer. So, now you know who. Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm yeah. So okay, so I'm going to get off, because my wife is probably expecting me to be up there soon to help her. I do this in my basement, so that's, I guess, a stereotype I live, but it's okay, because that's the only place I can do it. We don't have like a huge house. Again, we have 5 kids, and we live within our means. So but again, I want to say this. Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me speak and talk about these topics. It really does mean a lot to me. And yeah, I appreciate it. If you know someone looking for a statistician to help with such a survey, like if you know, like, diocesan school district people, I would be glad to help in creating a survey or a methodology to help with asking former students to, what they do. I am a statistician. I used to work for a survey statistical company. I do not have a doctorate. I have a master's. So if I have to have a doctorate, it seems like a unnecessary appeal to authority. But I mean, if that's what they require, I obviously can't do anything about that. But again, I'm offering my services because I would love to help the church, because that's my talent. And so that's what I'm trying to do here. So, okay, bye. All right. Thank you. K37. I'll talk to you guys later. And again, thanks for watching.